Hi, I'm Jason Inman.
And I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And this is Graywin, who's not going to say anything about tonight's episode of Game of Thrones because he's in mourning.
Oh, over the guy with the beard and thing?
No, over one of his brothers, because episode 5, The Door of Game of Thrones, was a big one, and we're going to recap it and review it for you right now.
Now, before we kick off into this episode, this is a warning that there are major spoilers for the episode ahead, so if you haven't watched, you might want to pause, go watch it, and come back later.
So the episode opens with Sansa having a meeting with Littlefinger and Lady Brienne, and Littlefinger apologized for all the things that Ramsay Bolton did to Sansa during her wedding, which I thought was a very interesting scene because I thought this was Sansa coming into herself. I saw a little bit of Catelyn in Sansa tonight. I saw a little bit of Catelyn Stark come through her daughter to Littlefinger, telling him off, and I don't know whether this was the intention of the writers, but for me, I got a little bit of a metaphor in this speech from Sansa to Littlefinger about the whole rape culture of Game of Thrones itself.
Really?
I saw a little bit of that coming out because I thought it was very interesting that she was like, tell me what you think he did.
Yeah.
And then Brienne was like, answer his question. What did you think about that?
I thought that was a very powerful scene in particular because that was a moment last season that a lot of people had a lot of problems with. And I know a lot of people, myself included, stopped watching for a little bit. And to have them address that in a way that feels organic and powerful coming from the female character affected, I think was a very, very strong choice. And Sophie Turner killed it.
Sophie Turner killed it in such a way that I don't think we'll see Littlefinger interacting with Sansa again unless Littlefinger tricks her somehow.
Nah, he's got his fingers in the veil from last episode.
And then we also learn about in Hidden ally, Brendan the Blackfish is out there, and he might be soon coming to Sansa's aid.
I think that's exciting because Sansa, for me, was always more of a Tully than a Stark if you're going to look at their physical appearances and the way they comport themselves.
Just like her mother.
She's so much Catelyn's daughter, and if she's the one who brings the Tullys and the Stark back to be reunited, that's going to be so amazing.
And it would change all of Westeros.
Yes, and Brendan the Blackfish is just a really cool character that we haven't seen enough of.
Then we move on to Braavos to see Arya do a bow staff fight scene, which I actually thought was really cool, and we learned the origins of the Faceless Men. And of course, Arya gets a mission. She has to go kill this actress in what I am going to coin the theater of Braavos.
Yes.
I love that it was the story of the death of Robert Baratheon and the death of Ned Stark and the death of Joffrey. And I love that throughout the scene, we got to see how Arya got to learn how the people of Westeros,
how they perceive that event that shaped her life.
And they think Ned Stark is an idiot.
They do, and they think Sansa's useless, which granted, I thought that at the beginning too.
But we got to admit, they got one thing right. Joffrey was still pretty girly.
Joffrey was a dick.
I liked that scene. I thought it was pretty powerful that Maisie Williams got to play most of this scene strictly on her face. And,
man.
And I like how, it was interesting how the people of Westeros, and I know Braavos is not in Westeros, but whatever, that world, how they view that Ned Stark really was trying to take over the throne.
Which is the last thing that would ever have been on that character's mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I also want to point out that they did keep the Tyrion face slap, which has become like an epic meme of Tyrion just whapping. So even the actors know about that face slap.
I want that gif.
Then we move on to a new vision that Bran is having in the Weirwood.
Yes.
Basically, the origin of the White Walkers. We learn that the children stabbed a man with this weird-looking sword, and he became basically one of the White Walkers.
Yeah, it's up in the air right now whether or not he is the Night King. But that would be that's
my guess. I think he's the Night King.
Yeah. Because he seems to be the first White Walker, and they apologize for it, but they're also not going to take any blame for the fact that happened because they were created under dire circumstances.
The children say that they created the White Walkers to fight men. So the problems that men are having right now are of their own accord.
Yeah.
This is probably a scene that is so at the crux of Game of Thrones because when the series opened, episode 1, it was all about seeing the White Walker.
Yes.
You know, what did you think about the scene? Because I know you are not a huge fan of the White Walkers.
I'm not a huge fan of the White Walkers, and seeing a lot of them and their minions didn't make me more of a fan in this particular episode.
Aww.
I really like the children and the idea of that, and that maybe...
See, I don't like the children at all.
Well, you can get out.
They
you
look,
can go over there with your White Walkers.
They look like they belong in Lord of the Rings.
But that's what I like about them, right? They're like, if like the Earth and the animals like had a baby and it was a fairy, and that's really cool. And I'm really interested in how they're sort of the leap from the weirwood to humans like Bran.
Yes.
And the fact that they're the ones who have wreaked havoc on Westeros, and now that the Westerosi humans are behaving like little buttholes, all of the magic is coming back to kind of put them in their place or maybe wipe them out. I think the consequences created by the children is very interesting.
But it's also interesting to think about how Bran is possibly the good version of the combination of the magic of the children combined with humans.
Yes.
And the White Walkers are like the bad version of that because it's half human mixed with the magic of the children. So they're opposite sides of the same coin.
Yes, and they probably are going to need Bran to keep them in check, but that might be a little later on in some of the episodes.
Well, that makes me think, too, that at the end of the day, we may never destroy the White Walkers. It just may be that maybe Bran just has to control the White Walkers or placate the White Walkers.
Maybe he'll become the new Night King.
That's what I was going to say, too. Oh. Then Yara Greyjoy makes her case to be the new King of Pike. Theon's like, yeah, it should be her. Then Euron, her uncle, shows up. Is like, no, it should be me. Of course, they make it him. And Yara hops on her ships and is like, you ain't going to get any of these ships, and leaves them far behind. Then we jump to the other side of the sea. Daenerys gets a short little scene with Mormont where Mormont reveals that he has a grayscale, and she basically forgives him after like 3 seasons of, in my opinion, just being a bitch. Like, this dude was so like devoted to her endlessly. He got grayscale because of her, and now that she knows he's dying, that's why she forgives him.
Yeah, but she forgives him, sends him away, and like orders him to cure his sickness. So it's kind of a really rude forgiveness, if I'm gonna be completely honest.
It's almost like flipping a bird to him.
It's like, you got cancer, go fix it.
Yeah, I thought Mormont carried that scene really strongly. That actor is amazing.
He's wonderful.
I thought Daenerys had a lot of dirt face in that scene and just really didn't pull it off for me.
For me, it was lacking because Daenerys is at her best when she's doing epic things, when she is the Khaleesi. When she's just the whiny 14-year-old girl, or 15 years old maybe by this time, it's not interesting because that's not a very... We see characters do that better. And this was unfortunately for me a weak scene for Daenerys.
Then back in Meereen, we learn that the pact that Tyrion made is sort of holding, and then we meet a new first priestess of the Lord of Light. And we notice something about her. What did we notice about her, Ashley?
We notice that, fun fact, she has the same necklace on that we are used to seeing Stannis' first priestess of the Lord of Light wearing. So it's interesting that she's probably going to have some of the same trickery that Melisandre had that we saw towards the beginning of this season.
Yes, and we learned that she is legit because she brings up the story of how Varys basically lost his junk.
Yep.
And she hits home some truths. And I have never seen Varys have a reaction like that.
To anyone.
To anyone. He's usually stone-faced, so I admire the actor making that choice. Then we move back to Bran, having some more visions in Treeland, and he sees all the dead of the North. He sees the Night King.
Yeah.
He sees all the White Walkers.
Yeah.
And the Night King touches him. And then Max von Sydow is like, oh crap, we're screwed because now he can come into my magic cave.
Yeah.
Then we go back to the Wall. Jon Snow is like, we need some more men because we can't take over the North. And again, I liked this scene a lot because Sansa was very like Catelyn again. She orders Brienne to deliver the message to her uncle, and they make the decision that we're just okay. If we can get the Tullys, we can go around to the other families in the North.
Get the minor families to ally with us. Yep.
And Davos makes a point that Jon Snow is not a Stark, which I was leaning towards. Like, I was like, oh, they're gonna learn about the Robb making him legit. This is gonna happen. And Sansa again forgiving him again a little bit for all the past deeds by giving him a cloak that looks like Ned Stark's cloak.
And it has the same sigil that's on my T-shirt across the strappy strap.
I'm really, really enjoying the new Sansa Jon Stark relationship.
Me too, and I can't wait for him to officially become Jon Stark. It's so wonderful
I think they're going to hold it for the end of the season.
I think you're right. To see a character like Sansa come into her own. She's done some of the most growth, I think, of any of the Stark kids over the course of this show, and she's turning out to be such a badass. I love it.
But the interesting thing about that is that I think a lot of that is from her time with Littlefinger.
Yes.
Like, I think she learned from the quote-unquote master.
Yes.
Then we get back to Branland, and the best scene I thought in Game of Thrones that I've seen in a long time. So Bran, he's watching his dad again. Yeah. He sees young Hodor, or Willis.
Willis, what's he talking about?
And Mira senses the White Walkers. The White Walkers and all of their minions come inside the cave. It is a epic battle royale, And then at the last moment, Bran wargs into Hodor. Hodor drags him out, and they get down this tunnel. All the children sacrifice themselves for Bran.
Pretty awesomely.
Yeah, the Night King kills Max von Sydow. Oh, damn it. It's like flashbacks to the Seventh Seal. And then we get to the door. We get to this door. Hodor opens the door. Hodor closes the door. And at that same moment in the flashbacks, Bran sees Hodor go into a seizure and starts hearing Mira's command, hold the door, hold the door, hold the door, until he keeps repeating it, and it turns into Hodor. And we learn that Hodor is a self-fulfilling paradox, and that Bran caused his own sort of best friend, I'm going to say best friend, death.
It's so sad, but it's so noble, and it is such a perfect realization of who that character is. And it kind of takes Hodor, who was a joke when we first met him, and makes him one of the most selfless characters in the whole series. And that is where I think Game of Thrones has an incredible strength over other TV shows.
We just read an article before we recorded this video, and the actor that plays Hodor said
Christian
that...
Nairn.
Yeah, he said that he knew that season 6 was going to be his death.
Yeah.
And he said when he read the script, he said that he thought there was no better way for him to go than Hodor sacrificing his life for Bran. I will admit, no part of Game of Thrones has made me teary-eyed. This moment did.
I also want to give mad props to the kid actor, who I thought did a really good job with something that can't have been very fun to shoot.
Oh, the kid Willis.
Yeah,
yes.
Kid Willis. You rocked.
I thought this was a great moment for Game of Thrones, and to me, this moment cemented a new theory that I have for how Game of Thrones is going to end, but also that George R. R. Martin's not making this up.
Oh, no, by the seat of his pants?
No.
No.
This episode kind of like locked into place a couple of things that I was like, oh, he's been working towards this. This is going to happen. Like, this is, I thought that moment possibly up there with the Red Wedding and up there with Ned Stark dying in the first season.
Yeah.
Like this hold the door.
It will be definitive in Game of Thrones.
One of the best moments. Because that'll be the thing. When people watch the show in the future, people will be like, oh, just wait till you get to hold the door.
Yeah.
You'll be like, what does that mean? And then you see it and you're like, oh,
God, why is this happening to us?
And then we have to talk about Grey Wind's dear brother.
Summer
sacrificing Summer's life. What did you think? Okay, let's talk about... Well, okay, as we end up this episode, because that's basically the episode, hold the door.
Yeah.
What do we think that there's only... One alive that we know of.
Ghost.
Probably two.
Nymeria, who we haven't seen since season 1 when they sent her off.
But you know she's coming back.
I hope so. I hope that she's the thing that brings Arya back to Westeros.
Yes, or saves Arya at the last second.
Or she welcomes her or something like that.
But I'm so sad because I was hoping that I want the direwolves to have a purpose.
But the direwolves have been an important piece of symbology in the Song of Ice and Fire series from the beginning. When they find them, their mother is dead because she has an antler through her face. Obviously, like the Baratheon antler or the falling of that kind of familial tree. And I think that you are seeing their direwolves die off when big changes come in their lives.
Yes.
And I think in the end, I think Ghost is the only one who makes it out.
You think?
I think so. I think because he's maybe not fully as Stark.
Okay. And real quick, we want to give our memoriam to the direwolves. Now let's rate this episode of Game of Thrones, Episode 5, The Door, out of 1 to 5 possibly dead direwolf heads. Ashley, what would you give this episode?
Well, despite the direwolf death, I'm going to give this episode 5 direwolves out of a potential 5. I think, for me, this is the best episode of Game of Thrones since the first season.
Wow, those are some heady words.
There you go. Throwing it out there.
I'm also going to give this a 5. I think this was a great episode, really emotional. I think last week's was better.
Oh, get out of
Just
town.
slightly, because the beginning of this episode was a little slow.
Yeah.
But I think it really hit home that we are starting to see the pieces of this puzzle fit together, and I'm really excited. I feel like we're in a freight train now towards the end.
Oh, totally.
And I'm so excited because I felt the last couple of seasons were really lacking, and I think this season is giving me the answers that I want, and I'm so happy and excited about that. Now let's move into some crazy predictions for the next episode or the further season. Now, Ashley, do you have a crazy theory about Game of Thrones based off this episode?
I do, because I'm gonna say that when we first met all of the various Starklings and their super friends, we noticed that Theon Greyjoy was very close to Jon and Robb, and we now know that he is probably helping to lead an uprising with Yara, which may or may not wind up aligning them with the Starks, but I'm still going to stick to that it is. That's an old prediction of mine, and I think that Theon is going to wind up being Jon's Hand of the King. So he'll never be in the position of power that he originally wanted as a younger man, but he is going to be the second best thing. He's going to grow up and be Ned Stark.
Interesting.
That's what I think is going to happen. How about you?
This episode really opened my eyes to something that Game of Thrones may be much simpler than we think.
Oh.
And my idea is that we think that Game of Thrones is about the White Walkers and all this stuff and all these things and whatever and da-da-da-blah-blah.
And Weirwoods.
This really leads me to think that the story of Game of Thrones is simply about the Stark children.
Okay.
Because the first season's all about splintering them out. And with Bran leaving the Weirwood, with Jon wandering out of the north, Sansa with him, and Rickon's around in Winterfell now, and Arya's out there as well. To me, I think the final episode of Game of Thrones, the whole point of Game of Thrones, I think is about the Starks coming back to Winterfell and reuniting and fighting the White Walkers. I think the final battle against the White Walkers is going to be at Winterfell, and all the Stark children that are currently... I don't think any more Stark children die. I think everyone that's alive right now, it will be alive in that final episode, and they will be in that battle fighting the White Walkers. And it'll either be something like where it's a peace where Bran becomes the king of the White Walker and makes them complacent, or it'll be something... like Daenerys is like, I'm gonna protect my half-cousin brother guy, whatever their relationship. Nephew. And blows them to hell with the dragons. I don't know, but I think Game of Thrones is all about the Stark children.
Cool. Love it.
There you go. Yes. So guys, don't forget, let us know down in the comments what you think about our theories. Do you think Ashley's right? Do you think I'm right? And do you
love Grey Wind?
Do you love Grey Wind and miss him? So there you go. Yes.
And don't forget that this episode was brought to you by MajorSpoilers.com, the comic book website where they love comics and they know that you do too.
That's right. You can check us out every week on patreon.com/John and support these videos. And don't forget to click subscribe. I'm Jason Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
That's right. Watch out for your dreams, because you never know in your dreams where you're going to find out about the secret uncle that has a secret code that you have secretly caused and caused your direwolf to die.
Oh, no.
That's it. Watch out. Watch out. Winter's coming. Bye.